the meeting of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board for February the 3rd will now please come to order. First item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Do you have any discussion or changes for that? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to amend the agenda to add after number 4, agenda items for March. And the agenda item I'd like to is moving forward the project, whatever way we need to address that. But before we were given this task, or we were going to look at those low-cost things that were in the plan, and then those medium cost, and then those reach goals. So we could start that process.
Okay, so 4A would be items for March agenda, moving forward with Park and Rec plans.
Yeah, just
Okay.
trying to envision what we might be able to do, particularly those that are low cost.
Okay. Oh. Sorry.
Okay, I gave you one. I did.
Okay, with that agenda amendment, do I have a motion that we approve the agenda?
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay.
The amended agenda,
All in
I'm gonna
favor?
need to add that in.
Amended agenda.
Okay, and I'm sorry, who was the motion?
I second
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Nope, the motion carries. Agenda is approved with that change. We have minutes that were sent to us of the previous meeting that are ready for discussion or approval. Are there any changes?
These are semantics, so I don't know if we,
Oh, understood.
I don't even know if we want to mess with them yet. I think the first one said stuff instead of suggestions.
Yeah. Okay, there are a couple of typo type changes that Susanna has that we'll give to Christie to
Just
amend.
one.
It still changes about the substance of the meeting, I mean, of the minutes. Anybody else?
Move
Okay, go
approval,
ahead.
move approval with corrections.
Okay, second.
Second.
All opposed? I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm trying to trick you guys. Any opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. Thank you for those changes. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is what we'll spend the majority of time on, I think, in the meeting today. Christie sent out another draft of the report that we worked on last time for your review, and this is probably the last time, since we're not calling special meetings, that I'm aware of. This is probably the last time that you'll have to make changes to that to that report. So please, let's go through it. Any changes that you have, please let them be known so that we can consider them. And also, as soon as we do that, I'd like to run through a summary of that that's in PowerPoint form that I would plan to present to the board on their next meeting. And this will have to go to them in just a couple of days in the board package. So we need to do some final stuff on that as well. So I guess the easiest thing to do is, if you've had a chance to look over that report, are there obvious things that you agree or disagree with? Are there changes that need to be made? I've got one. I'm not comfortable that with the stuff around the pricing, around the cost, I think perhaps we need to put a little bit of wiggle room in there and say that that's based on one data point, and I'm not sure what, maybe Christie or David or somebody knows what the timing was on that data point. We don't know how old that number was that we got from them. That was $180,000 for the Ocean Isle facility, so I'm a little, at least where the when that was, so if the board should ask how accurate that number would be today, I'm not prepared to do much more on that. So does anybody have any info on when that was built? If not, I'm gonna stick a sentence in there that says it's a single data point, and we're not sure of how relevant it is to the cost.
Unless we were able to find out the year in which those renovations were done.
Yeah.
At one point, we had a document that showed that very day that we had the, field trip, that showed that property from Brunswick County GIS, but I don't have that piece of paper now. If you prefer, I can ask Tim if he can find out when they did the renovations to it. If he can find that out.
Yeah, if he can do it without a lot of trouble, I think it's a decent piece of data to throw in there. If it's a big deal for him to find out, then let's just disclaim a little bit. I'll put a sentence in that basically says we're not, sure with the crazy volatility of building prices and so forth, how applicable that was, and that the builders and the board of commissioners figure that out.
I mean, I think with the way building cost is, that even if it was done it was done longer than 2 years ago, that I think any estimate needs to be an approximation, because it's probably gonna be higher than anything that's been built lately.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. So we'll either get a date or I'll put a sentence in. Okay, so what have we got? And that also, you'll note in there that on the recommendation part at the end, in terms of picking something after some comments that Grace made, Candace made, I realized that, perhaps we need to have in there that should the board decide to build community meeting space on the pier property, then the option of making this restroom kind of facilities there might be the preferable one. Otherwise, we'd go with what we said in terms of renovation like Ocean Isle. So that was a difference in that and the previous version that you got.
So is that different from the first option?
It's, the conclusion is a little different than the first thing we wrote, first thing we evaluated last time. Just in the and possibility that since the board's taking steps to purchase the pier, that we don't know what their plans are. If they plan on building redundant facilities, then certainly this would be a good outcome. So, anything else that you want to change right off the bat, or do you want me to go through that?
I've got just a couple of things.
Okay.
Just that very first sentence, I think we need to capitalize B forward, just because it's the proper title. The only other thing, there's a lot of semantics that I've written down, but for clarification, on the last under findings, first page, next to last sentence, it does say, and 2 additional bedrooms and bath. Are we saying there's 2 of each?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because the tax record shows one thing, and our recollection of the property upon inspection shows something else. It appears, whatever it was designed as, that they're using it as a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath facility. I believe is what we decided. and it shows up as being, on the tax records, as being, what was it? Three
It listed
bedroom,
something
two
as
bath.
an office.
Hmm.
It listed a room as an office on the tax
Okay.
records.
But my question is about the bathroom, it says that there's three
Yeah,
and a half
because I'm
baths.
going putting a number
The
there.
main floor is 1.5, so if somebody's doing the math, then you need to say there's 2 baths upstairs,
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, we could, I guess, the 2 additional bedrooms and bath.
Mhm.
It's not clear.
put another two in there.
It's not clear.
If you put 2 in front of bath, it's
Mhm.
clear. I'm just trying to be, you know.
No, I agree.
Okay,
And the only.
yeah, and I had, you caught me wiggling out of committing there.
The only
I
other
don't
thing-
think you should commit.
Ah,
I
No.
don't think you should commit to how many there are in there currently.
okay,
Okay.
Well, then we don't need to have the description of 3.5 baths and X number of bedrooms.
Yeah,
We
I
know.
don't think that based on what you guys are doing for this, that it's important to go back through that, because you're supplying them with the tax record that says how it was built. So, I don't think you have to specify, because it doesn't affect your outcomes of what you plan to do with it.
yeah. Should the,
Should we just
so would
take
you
that
be
out?
comfortable that if we
Scratch the whole
said
thing.
according to the tax records,
Yes,
Yeah.
it contains X, and what is that X? That's what I was having trouble getting with. According to the tax records, then it, there's a copy of that tax record in there, isn't there?
it's behind attachment 3.
Yeah.
That's what? Yeah. So somebody help me there in terms of what it's claiming on each floor, that's, I think that's what
Do
I'm
we need to even say anything other than square footage?
That's right.
Do we need to say anything other than just the square footage? I'm trying to find the tax.
Okay. We could do that, we could just say the house consists of upper and lower level with bedrooms, bathrooms, et cetera, kitchen, and not specify anything.
You think you're better off that way?
Okay. All right.
And the only other thing I had drawn, and this is just me being, but on the very last page, or actually it's the next to the last page,
Mhm.
we talked about, the daily charge of $100, but then we came up to $750 annually, and that's, do we do less than a day? So I thought that should be
yeah, okay.
700 or 800,
That's a good
but
point.
not 750. There's gonna be somebody.
Yeah, the,
Somebody gonna pick that apart.
yeah, and the reason for that, there were a couple of different rates. They sort of averaged about $100 a day, but it was 70 a day, I believe, for residents and 100 for non-residents or whatever, but the mix was, overall, we'd rented it about X number of times for so much money, and it came out to be roughly $100 a day.
Yeah, our current rate structure is 75 and 85 for the picnic shelter and 100 and 110 for the pavilion, so.
Yeah, so I remember we addressed that in here. So do you wanna leave it? Or
No,
you wanna
I
round-
think here, let's change,
Round
it's
it up.
easy to change. And let's just change it to, because we're talking about the expectation for it in terms of rental income, and it's not really significant in terms of the overall operations and price, I don't think, but where's that sentence?
It's the next to the last page, second paragraph, last sentence.
Okay, gotcha. So we could say, based on historical private use other facility, we could expect, I'll change it minimally to approximately,
Yeah.
and make it $800 annually, okay?
Yeah, it's not enough for the money to matter, I mean.
And we can justify that one. Okay, what was you said, you were asking me to capitalize the board.
The very
somewhere.
first sentence in the document.
What did you,
Um,
oh, the,
Board, no, that's
huh?
it.
The park and rec board, the board.
Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, the word B for board. You can
Oh,
check it out.
oh,
Check it
thank
out
you.
for now.
I got you.
You can, yes,
I was looking up above down before. Okay, thank you. What else we got?
that's all I have.
Down on this end of the table, anything?
Good.
Okay, I'll make those changes and send them back to Christie or anybody else who would like to review them. I guess I can't send everybody. We can do another if you want. Okay, let's move to the PowerPoint. So this is what I would plan to present to the board after much polishing from today. This is the first run, but I think I have to target 5 or 6 minutes for the whole thing, so we'll be skipping very lightly over things and not getting into detail. So essentially the task here to us was to develop recommendations regarding the possibilities for development and use of the property and for it to be consistent with the Parks and Rec master plan, which showed usage for community rec resorts, bathhouse showers, classrooms, meeting spaces, etc., and ADA compliance. So the next one.
I would audit that, edit that first slide to have a full title, Parks and Rec. See where you've got Park Master Plan,
Oh, okay.
just have the full title of what our plan is.
Can somebody mark that? Oh,
You
I thought then.
don't have a slide.
We don't
They're
have,
in here. Yeah, it's in there. Is it?
No,
No,
not in here.
I didn't print the slides, you were just talking from them.
Oh,
We
okay.
decided not to have those.
Can you just
attached.
write them for me?
I got it, I wrote it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. So the next one then, the actions we took were to assess the current status of the property and create and submit a pretty extensive list of questions to Tim, then meet with Tim and the town staff to discuss those questions and answers. We visited other community center facilities and/or looked at websites. And then we tried to evaluate options that we thought the property could affect the property against the TASPER requirements to make sure we were being compliant. And then identify which option we felt best met the stated goals of the TASPER. The pros we came up with in terms of the potential suitability were the central location is very good. It's about 4.5, 5 miles west of the bridge and a couple of miles west of the pier. So it's centrally located. There are parking spots nearby at the number 3 sewer lift station. Just eyeballing it, looks like there are about 10 or 12 spaces there. There's a camel walkway almost directly across from the 796 property. The proposed bike lane will abut the property and likely increase the need for having some public facilities. And Tim feels the property is structurally sound based on a cursory visual walkthrough that he did at the time of purchase. Okay? The cons on the suitability. The cost for the renovation will be significant. The cost to make it ADA compliant will be significant. There may be an odor and noise issue which is not evaluated yet. And the impact on neighboring homes and property values must be determined, although there will only be one neighboring home really in terms of adjacency because the sewer pump is on the other side. The purchase price, if that property is used for anything other than sewer fund activities, would need to be paid back to the sewer fund out of proceeds from the sale. And the biggest one that we dealt with was what's the board's plans for the pier and for their property that they have pre-existing plans. Because we don't want to be in the position of building a redundant facility with something that might be, or might have since been planned for the pier. Okay. Couple of pictures of the outside of the house. It's a typical beach cottage, and I'll point with a pointer which way is which, it's hard to see there. Inside looks like it's pretty well maintained. Bedrooms, one of those bedrooms, you can see how nice the view was up there in that previous slide, out towards the intercoastal. If you look out the window there on the original picture, you can see the marshland out there. It's pretty nice. Okay. Again, just, nothing unusual, it's just a beach cottage, but as you can see, it's cut up in a way that it would be suitable for our intended use. We'll get there in a minute. Okay, so we wanted to focus on the intended uses for the property that the tester requires and look at the changes that might best support that use. So we looked at a few options. Using the facility as it is with just some minimal renovation, renovating similar to the Ocean Isle Community Center, building a completely new structure, or tearing the structure down and leaving it torn down, putting in some parking places, maybe, or restroom facilities there. And option 5 was to sell the property. Next. The option we thought most suitable, assuming there's no community area defined at the pier location, would be our option 2, which was renovate similar to Ocean Isle. The first floor will be opened up into a large deck with some vinyl weather protection under it. You'll see better in the slide in a minute. There'll be a serving area only for catered meals, no cooking. There'll be restrooms inside and out, showers inside and out, or excuse me, showers outside, and an ADA ramp that would connect to the first floor. Second floor would remain storage only and not be used for any public access. Eventually, we can envision a large deck overlooking the marshland, and there's a potential for a long-term walkway into the marsh as the Parks and Rec Master Plan discusses in terms of connected walkways. Next. This is a picture of the Ocean Isle facility. As you can see from the front, it's between a couple, excuse me, a couple of residences. It's basically an open, or excuse me, a covered deck, as the next picture shows, going into an open deck with walkways, and those serve as the classroom spaces and facilities places. We think we could do something like that. The next slide. Olivia's made us a drawing of what we might do. And again, we'd have this would be the Ocean Boulevard side. Or excuse me, this would be the Ocean Boulevard. Yes,
Yeah.
this would be the Ocean Boulevard side. So under the roof area would be a kitchen area with a pass-through for food. We'd have a couple of toilets, bathrooms over here, and microwaves and so forth. Then again, under the covered area of the deck, the roof still over the top, you'd have some seating which would open up to a bigger deck with more completely outside seating. Eventually a walkway, the next slide. There's a visual of the outside. So you have the same sort of situation, and you can see that the front of the house is the part that we're using. It's the covered area. This area here would have houses protected for weather, so would be the majority part of the outside space. And again, eventually going into some kind of a walkway and covered area into the marsh. Okay. Cost and timing. The Ocean Isle Beach project cost $180,000. We're not sure at what point in time that figure was provided. We, our park master plan estimated about $150,000 for the types of renovations we're looking at, so we think they're pretty close considering the fluctuations in material, something in that ballpark, and our builders would have a much better idea of what actual costs are. We would request that if the board intends to go forward with this option, that they would launch formal inspections, architectural planning, and obtain some estimates early in the next fiscal year, with the hope that the renovation could be completed within a year of start. Alright. The reason we didn't choose the other options, and we won't go into a lot on this, but essentially option one, using it as it is, just wouldn't work. It's an old house with a bunch of rooms and stuff in it that wouldn't be suitable for letting the public loose, and would have to spend quite a bit of money, we think, just in rebuilding the bathrooms and so forth, and tearing out a few walls, and it's no return on investment for that. Option three, the completely new structure, although that allows more design flexibility and is more costly, it doesn't really take advantage of the existing building structure, which we believe to be intact and useful. Option four, tearing it down and putting some parking places in there, is probably the cheapest option, and it generates some income and some parking places. But the reason we didn't go with that option is that it does not address the requirements of the tasker as put forth to us, which include community space for classes and community activities. And then option five is just to sell the property outright. We think because the property was bought to be a buffer on the sewer station, we think probably because of the adjacent lift station that there is an impact on the price, and obviously that option doesn't address our need as defined in the test. Next slide. This is, let's see, I think I've kind of out of order. I just put in some pictures of the Charlotte River walk to illustrate what, a nice walk through the marsh might look like at some point, knowing that that's a future enhancement. I should probably move that up after the pictures of the drawing, I think. Okay, next one. So in the summary, there were two viable options for 796. One would be the renovation that we described that fulfills all the intents of the tasker, and would be based on the Ocean Isle Community Center facility design. But if the board envisions that your property is going to contain community activity spaces in their rebuild down there, and then 796 would be redundant space for that, and could be demolished and replaced with parking or other impermanent restrooms. And I think that's the last one, wasn't it? Was at the end of the slide. Oh, yeah. And the Parks and Rec board worked on this, and was responsible for supporting of the comment. God. Okay, what do we need to do to that, other than me get the,
John, the only thing you might want to add to the renovation of the house would be the outside restrooms, that would be on the lower level, because that is really a major emphasis of public restrooms that are accessible to people that are walking, and that's where those would be, not in the upper level. So I think that needs to be stated. That
okay, I think I had it on there, but it wasn't emphasized. I need to,
yeah, because I just think that needs to be said, that the outdoor showers and the public, restrooms. When you talk about the design.
gotcha. Thank you. What else we got? Anything glaring in there that,
You did a great job.
You did a wonderful job. And we want
I like
to-
Olivia's pictures, I'll stick the pictures of how we might generate and, in the report, there's some talk about numbers and how many parking places and how much, money they might generate and so forth. Mike went into the previous board presentations and dug out those figures to give us an idea on that.
No, I
There are
think-
a couple of things in there too, for parking that we didn't mention, that Mike had pointed out. First of all, we have no idea what kind of bulkheading and so forth might be required here that would, be significant cost, but it also complicates the fact that you're not gonna be, driving out the other end of the property. And I didn't mention and intended to, that behind the property got lots privately owned, so if we end up going to the marsh way, we're gonna go around. You'd almost have to go around that lot unless you bought it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd get into that in this presentation.
Got it?
I think that's so far out, the marshland walk,
Yeah,
that would be solved at, I think at a later time, but,
yeah, I think you're right.
that's, the PowerPoint's excellent and right on
Great
point.
job.
The
Great job.
report is,
I think so too.
So,
And we want
Make
you
sure
for a
I-
lot of reasons to stay
make sure.
healthy between now and that board meeting. For a lot of reasons, Sean.
I think the PowerPoint and report really good, you wouldn't worry about it. It could be easily replaced. Yeah, okay, thank you. I will, I'll make sure we get that outdoor restrooms emphasized, because that, I think it's gonna be, that has to be a big selling point for the bike path. Anything else? Okay, so we'll go with those changes we talked about in the report, and I'll make the changes on PowerPoint and get emphasis on those other couple of points, and then toss that out there and see what happens, huh?
yeah.
Okay, anything else on the report before we put it to bed?
Again, just great job.
Fabulous job.
Yeah, great job.
And
Thank
thank you for Olivia
Yeah.
and Mike.
Thank you.
Great job.
guys.
Thank you.
And Candace, you
Put
reviewed it.
stuff in.
Well, that's not hard to do, but
Just a reminder that I'll need all the changes by Monday for Heather.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that, at different times, Candace and Suzanne looked at different, versions of this and had very useful comments that were incorporated into what this turned out to be. Okay, 4A, Susanna, we wanna talk about putting agenda items on for March, or looking at what we can do that we had planned to do prior to this popping up, right?
I think we sent those all to Christie, is that not correct?
Yes, I have what you guys put as your, for everybody that sent them in, I have what you put as your, stretch goals and low goals, but I will say that if you take those numbers, especially if you don't know what the board's gonna do with 796. But if you take the numbers for what was recommended in the Parks and Rec Master Plan for next year, and you add in 796, and you look at the things that you guys prioritized, it was, I don't have that in front of me right now because I didn't realize we were gonna talk about it today, but, it was a really big number that's not gonna fly.
Well,
That's the best way I can put it for you.
but-
It is, that's not gonna fly in the B part budget for next year, so.
Well, we haven't even looked, even discussed what we could even whittle it down to, so
Right.
that's what you wanna talk
That's
about.
right, right, and plus too, by the time we meet on March 3rd, we will have some kind of feeling about where the direction the board's gonna give us after the meeting their meeting in February. So even if we don't do anything but look at those real low-cost items and try to come up with a priority list of those minimally or little to no cost, and there was some things that was out there like signage and things that could come into play. One of the expenses and what we're asking in this proposal or the tasker is we're saying we need, for the upcoming fiscal year, we need, funds allocated from the town to get the engineer and architectural renderings and all that. So we'd be building, I know those fees don't come inexpensively, but it's not like we're asking for the upcoming fiscal year for the renovation to take place. So it might be that there would be some way we could do some things, at least on the low cost items.
So we need each define, we need to take the list, we should first define what we think is feasible.
Do you have it where you can collapse it and it be kind of a working document, Christie, because we don't know what other people sent other than ourselves?
Yeah, but I can't share it with you prior to the next board meeting.
Right, but what I'm saying is, can it be shared at the next meeting
Yes.
for us to have a discussion of how we feel about that? And if there's somebody that hasn't sent one in, you can single them out in an email and ask if they have any contributions. We won't do that in the meeting. But I really think we don't need to put our whole life as far as Parks and Rec on hold, thinking that there's gonna be a big move with this project and, or expenditure before we even start a new fiscal year.
Well, I can tell you currently one of the largest expenditures for next year that's listed in the capital improvement plan is a cost of around, that was just an estimate, $250,000 for Jordan Boulevard bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is one of the items on the list, I mean, on the Park and Rec master plan list, right? Okay.
I don't, they did
No, it's
not,
not on
No,
there.
that's not on there. It's not on there.
Not George
No,
Boulevard.
we had addressed that in our capital improvement plan prior to the Parks and Rec master plan coming out.
Okay.
And they did not address any, they addressed, to my recollection, they addressed, convenient sites at parks, but they never
Okay.
addressed bathrooms for large facility coverage.
Okay. I don't know why I thought that.
I did too.
But Christie, are we correct in, when we talk about some of those low costs like signage, landscaping, you know, if I remember, and I'm trying to think from the plan, the proposal, there were a lot of what I call minimally cost items on there. So that we could at least try to put some of those in place this year. But we'll, if we can come together next month with everybody's contribution as to what they would like to see happen, that would be a starting point for us.
Do we know, or somebody find out in the 2021 and 2022 master plan, of the items that are listed on there that was planned for this budget year, what has been done and what's planning to get done, or, you know, any, again, I know we talked about one time, down at the Halstead Park, that they had done some repairs down there. Is that
They
right?
did do repairs down there.
Yeah, but, if any of the other stuff has been done yet, or is it planned in this year to get done, or?
So I guess, Christie, could you give us an update on what's been done next meeting?
Based on the timelines in the master plan.
Yeah.
And then I suggest whatever we decide on this next meeting, and pick up on ongoing projects, we need to develop a project plan so that we can make decisions and see they actually get done. As far as we have the means to get them done. We at least have to deliver a number for our budget, preparation, correct? We have to give
You guys can give input, when it comes down to the final budget, it'll be how we can balance the budget. So the commissioners can take projects off, or, staff may see a need to move projects, but you certainly make recommendations for the budget process for the expenditure side.
Okay, anything else on this topic then? So that pretty much describes our March agenda, I think. Anything else, Mike, Olivia?
No.
Okay, public comments. Any comments from the public today? Nothing? All right, then I believe that wraps up the meeting. If we have a motion to adjourn,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
a second.
Second.
All in favor?